Unit 3C. Listening. The body's limits. 1. Speaking, describe and compare the photos. What are the similarities and differences between the activities? Use the words below to help you. Become dehydrated. Climber. Dessert. Food and water. Frostbite. Oxygen. Tent. Both show people doing physically challenging activities in extreme conditions. In photo A, the people are walking in a desert in extreme heat. They are lightly dressed and carrying rucksacks. If they aren't careful, they could become dehydrated and even die. In photo B, there's a climber sitting outside a tent in the mountains. He's wearing an oxygen mask to help him breathe at this high altitude. 2. Read the listening strategy. Then try to say the numbers and measurements below. Listen and check. Some listening tasks may involve listening out for numbers, dates, and measurements. Make sure you know how to pronounce these so that you can identify the information when you hear it.
Exercise 2.
Large numbers. 4,500. 100,000. 250,000. 2.5 million.
Small numbers. 0. 0.6. 0.04. 2.08.
Years. 1,500. 1,535. 2,000. 2015. 2150. The 1980s.
Fractions. A half. A third. A quarter. A fifth. A tenth. 3/8. 1 2/3.
Percentages. 50%. 57%.
Ratios and ranges. 2:1. 10:1. Aged 18 to 25. From 0 to 100 in 3.1 seconds.
Temperature. Minus 40 degrees Celsius. 0 degrees Celsius. 5 degrees Celsius. 15 degrees Celsius.
How to pronounce numbers. When we say numbers with decimals, we use point. Example 3.5 is 3.5. When we say years, we treat the first two digits as a separate number. For example, 2015 is 2015. When we say ratios, we use 2. Example 20 to 2 is 20 to 2. When we talk about a range, we can say between and or 2. Therefore, 5 to 10 is 5 to 10 or between 5 and 10. 0 can be pronounced as not, newt. 3. Read and listen to the article. Complete the article with numbers and measurements from Exercise 2.
Lesson 3C. Exercise 3.
There are many amazing stories of human survival. But actually, our bodies are very fragile and do not cope well with extremes. Polar explorers can cope with temperatures of minus 40 degrees Celsius, but only if they keep warm. Most people will collapse if their body temperature drops by only 5 degrees Celsius. And if it drops by 15 degrees Celsius, they'll die. Heat can be just as dangerous. Temperatures of 35 degrees Celsius are safe provided humidity is not above 50%. High altitudes are dangerous too. We pass out when the pressure falls below 57% of normal atmospheric pressure. This happens at about 4,500 meters. Climbers can go higher because their bodies gradually get used to it. But no one survives for long at 8,000 meters. At high altitudes, lack of oxygen is another problem. At ground level, about a fifth of the air is oxygen. If that falls below a tenth, we die.
New words. Limit. The point beyond which something cannot or may not proceed. The athlete pushed himself to his limits to break the world record. Dehydrated. Having lost too much water from your body? After running for an hour, I became dehydrated and needed to drink some water. Extreme. The greatest or highest degree of something. The athlete pushed herself to the extremes during the marathon, but she managed to finish the race. Collapse. To fall down suddenly, to break down completely. The student collapsed in class to exhaustion from staying up all night. Synonym. Pass out. Deliberate. Done on purpose rather than by accident, intentional. He deliberately fell over to get his parents' attention. Fragile. Easily broken or damaged, delicate, weak. After breaking her arm, the patient's bones became very fragile. Matching. Attitude. Humidity. Space capsule. Cosmonaut. Pressure. Vacuum. Four. Listen to an interview with a scientist. Which of the people he talks about tested the body's limits deliberately? 3 Russian cosmonauts died in 1971 when their space capsule had a major problem at an altitude of 168 kilometers. In 1966, a scientist was testing a spacesuit in a special room when the pressure suddenly dropped to almost zero for a period of 27 seconds. For example, on the 28th of December 1963, Randy Gardner, a 17-year-old student, got up at 6 o'clock in the morning and didn't go back to sleep again until the morning of the 8th of January 1964. 5. Read the sentences aloud, paying attention to the number. Then listen again and decide whether the sentences are true or false. Let's check the answer. 3 Russian cosmonauts died in 1971 when their space capsule had a major problem at an altitude of 168 kilometers. In 1966, a scientist was testing a spacesuit in a special room when the pressure suddenly dropped to almost zero for a period of 27 seconds. For example, on the 28th of December 1963, Randy Gardner, a 17-year-old student, got up at 6 o'clock in the morning and didn't go back to sleep again until the morning of the 8th of January 1964. Seven. Speaking. Discuss the question in pairs. 1. Have you ever been awake all night or most of the night? If so, when, where, why? 2. Have you ever felt very cold? If so, when, where, why? 3. Have you ever experienced high altitude? If so, when, where, why? How did you feel?